specialized. That's pretty good. They had a national trust that has a city of year.
Yeah, that would be, yeah.
The applicant.
Late 90s or 2000, somewhere in there.
It would have been the 2000s.
Like early 2000s.
The city manager.
Yeah, it was like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And they're actually, that's the only time I've seen Jamestown. Is when at the conference. There was a
They had
trip
like a
over to-
tour?
Yeah, it was a trip over to Jamestown.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
It's that, I think it is that Yeti.
Yeah, this is the, I was a kid, but a young kid, they just went to ride a ferry to Newport.
James, how are you?
Well, that's in Jamestown now. I've been to Newport.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, it's like a mile. It's like right
Testing,
there.
can you hear okay? The audio houses that are owned by the city or the preservation organization that people can live in.
You can just type and let us know if you can hear the audio in the chat.
It's great. I read like a preservation magazine. It's profile. It's pretty cool. Of course, Providence is famous for the canals or whatever they call them. Big river for the most part.
That'll work, Jamie.
The interpreter, I think, Grace River.
It looks like they took the fires and the
Yeah,
baskets. Yeah. It's a great story.
Yeah.
And then there's a beautiful neighborhood on the hill.
Oh, okay.
There's Brown. Where Brown is up.
Lori, can you hear us okay?
Historic residential, 1700s.
Yeah, I was gonna say the really old stuff.
It's got a funny name with the street. It's like, anyway, it's pretty cool there.
Do you want to join?
I'm gonna jump, yeah, exactly. We're gonna go to the other room, there's no feedback.
Yeah, last time we had to do this too. So we're just gonna have 4 tonight.
So is Christina, I assume she's just probably not gonna be able to make it.
So do you have a
We do. We have 4. 2 on Zoom and 2 in the room.
But for something to pass, does it have to be the majority of members or the majority of the quorum?
It would be the majority of the quorum.
Oh, okay. It's a little technical with some things.
Let's see if he's. I don't think we'll have a problem tonight. Did everyone in the audience get a chance to sign in? There's a sign-in sheet out there? Okay, great. Let's see what happened to Conrad. He was there a minute ago. Okay. All right, I just admitted you. Conrad, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm gonna get my headphones on.
Okay. Can you hear us now? Okay. How about now? How about now? Can you hear us now? Can you hear me now? How about now? How about now? No? I don't hear you at all. Can't hear you.
The audio is not,
The audio-
maybe Laura can help us out.
You may need to join the audio. The computer is not connected. If you come out there and go down to the bottom left-hand corner, you may need to join where it says join audio, click, and then join the computer audio. And now, hopefully, they
I can
should be
hear
able
you.
to hear you.
Can you guys hear us now?
Yes.
Lori? All right,
Yeah.
great, okay, thank you so much. It's always nerve-wracking when that happens. Okay. So,
Ready?
are you all set? Oh, we're gonna hit record, and upstairs we're recording already? Okay, great.
Recording in progress.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Today is Tuesday, May 10th. It is 7:05. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Burlington Historic Preservation Commission. This meeting is being held hybrid, so in person and on Zoom. If you have any technical difficulties on Zoom, contact Jamie Lawson. Your number's on there, right?
It is.
Yeah.
336-380-7064.
So if you're having trouble with audio, you can contact her. If you wish to speak and you're on Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature, and Jamie will let me know that you wish to speak, and then I will acknowledge you. Okay, so I guess the first thing I need to do the two, or is it three absences technically?
Yes.
So, well, I know Christina, they contacted you, so.
Yes, so you're going to be requesting excused absences for both Brian Pennington, Russ Vandermest-Beeler, and Christina Meiking.
Okay. So, all right, so from the commission, I'm going to ask a motion to approve their absences.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Jamie, can you do a roll call then?
Sure. Chair Ulis,
Yes.
Lori Bryan,
Yes.
Josh Atkins,
Yes.
and Wendy Geis.
Yes.
All right. So moving on.
And we'll just do, I think we just skipped
Yeah.
over a roll call.
Sure.
Yeah, so we'll just do a quick roll call.
Okay.
Chair Ulis,
Here.
all right, so Brian Pennington, the vice chair, has been excused, as has been Russ Vandermest-Beeler. Wendy Geis,
Here.
Josh Atkins,
Here.
Lori Bryan,
Here.
and Christina Meiking has also been excused.
All right. And so, moving on to agenda item number 2 is the approval of the minutes for April 12th. Did everybody on the commission get a chance to look at them? Did anybody have any changes they wanted to add to them, or were they fine? Okay. So, well, if there's no that, then I need a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Jamie, will you do a roll call, please?
Sure, Chair Ulis,
Yes.
Lori Bryan,
Yes.
Josh Atkins,
Yes.
and Wendy Geis.
Yes.
All right. All right, so we only have one application for a major COA tonight, and that would be a request by Sharon Westbury and Scott Walters to install a new patio with a 17 by 60-inch covered roof at 405 Mountain Place. Jamie, do you have a staff?
Yes, and the applicants are here present, Ms. Westbury and Mr. Walters, and I just wanted to clarify, it's not an actual brand new patio, it's sort of squaring off their existing patio, so they'll be able to testify to that. But I do affirm that all the information I'm providing is the truth to the best of my ability. So I'm just scrolling through to the packet, and we did receive an application for the major COA for 405 Fountain Place. Included in the packet are the relative findings of fact, as well as the application itself and the various maps and pictures that the applicant has provided, so I'll scroll through to get to those. Staff is recommending approval of the application, and the applicants, if you want to come up or come over to the table, feel free
We don't
to-
mind, I promise.
Feel free to introduce yourselves and supplement any information that I've provided. And I'll be able to get to the slides too, so if you want to just describe briefly what you're looking to do. So Sharon, do you affirm that the information you're providing is the truth to the best of your ability?
Yes.
Okay, and Mr. Walters, I forget your first name. I'm sorry.
Scott.
Scott, do you also affirm that the information you're going to provide is the truth to the best of your ability?
Yes.
Okay. Feel free to.
Okay, so as Jamie clarified, the patio that is in the home location today basically has rounded exterior corners on the yard side. We have to replace the patio for a variety of reasons, and at this point, we're taking down the knee wall and basically squaring off the patio. In conjunction with this, we are requesting to be able to do roughly half of the patio space as covered.
So this basically, you can see here, I don't want to speak for you, but you can see here the existing patio that's rounded, and then the purple highlights where you're expanding it to square it off.
Correct.
And then the green area is where the roof is going to be, it's going to be an extension here.
Correct.
Would you just describe briefly the materials that you're going to be using?
Sure. As what we have right now over this bump out on the back is basically a semi-flat shed roof. There is a membrane, and it is almost at end of life, so it has to be replaced at this point. So this is also the reason why we want to go ahead and do the patio cover at the same time. It will be a standard membrane product. As we all know, and love to hear, product availability is always a challenge right now. So it's a standard membrane. We are leaning more towards a commercial product. Doesn't mean anything to you, won't look any different, it's just longevity. Within our document, we called out that there's white. There's currently white coating on there now. It's also available in black, and we actually have 95% settled on a contractor who also has access to a gray. So this is actually going to be our preferred color. We feel that it will blend better, but we don't know what's going to end up being available. But that will be the desired product color.
I think that covers the pictures.
Is there any questions from the commission members for the applicants? I'll say I think it looks pretty self-explanatory, and I think it'll look obviously a lot better when it's in my opinion. So I think I don't see any reason why nothing would be too bad. So any commission members?
I'll just say, I think the gray will be nice, it'll blend in with your roofing materials. The white would look strange, I think, not that anybody's above there looking, but.
We agree too, actually,
Yeah.
yes, and black would just prefer not to black, so the gray would turn out to be a nice option.
The coating that is on that existing flat shed area now is white, but again, the goal is to be able to have it in this gray.
Are there any, Jamie, did you get any calls from?
We have not received any calls or emails regarding this application. I do see that there are people in the audience.
Did anybody in the audience want to comment or want to add to it?
There's also a number of people attending via Zoom. So I'll just ask if anybody has any comments participating that way to use the raise hand feature or dial star 9. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands go up at this time.
Is this on the west side? It's on the west side of your house?
See, I'm on the corner, so that's fine. I don't know what direction it is. I'm on the corner of Fountain and
I
Cottage.
think it's east.
East.
And so it would be parallel to,
Across from the niece house.
I'm sorry?
Across the street from the niece house.
I don't know.
The stone prison looking
Oh,
house.
no, I'm away
Oh,
on the side.
no,
I'm the
we're at
first
Fountain
house.
and Cottage.
So she went through the maps of the house, I didn't see where you were.
Yeah, I'm the first home.
If you have a dark colored roof, it's gonna get pretty hot if it's facing the west.
Yeah, right now,
Yes.
yeah.
So here is the property here, sir. It's highlighted.
All right,
Yeah.
way down to the bottom, all right. That's where they did all that digging, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, just recently, we put in for a sprinkler system and they ran into a hiccup and they had to dig it in.
Okay, unless there are any other questions.
Does anybody else have any questions before I do? So I'm gonna go ahead and, the findings of fact, can I just,
So included in the staff report, we have listed a number of findings and facts.
so is, for the commission members, are the findings of facts, do you have any additions to them?
Yeah.
Josh, do you have any?
I do not.
Okay. All right, well then.
I do have a question. I hate to be, like, approved paving materials are stonework or tile, but it's currently cement. Does that mean we need to put stonework or tile on it?
No, I mean, these are findings of facts that are relative to our existing standards. So we are, you know, if you're replacing the material with the material that you have right now, essentially.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so then I need a motion to approve the findings of fact stated in the report.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Seconded.
Okay. Jamie, can you do a roll call then?
Chair Ulyss,
Yes.
Wendy Geis,
Yes.
Lori Bryan,
Yes.
and Josh Atkins.
Yes.
Okay. So now, moving on, unless there's any other discussion, I need a motion to approve the application.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Jamie, will you do a roll call?
Sure. Chair Ulyss,
Yes.
Wendy Geis,
Yes.
Josh Atkins,
Yes.
and Lori Bryan.
Yes.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you very
This
much.
is just, get with Jamie and she'll give you all the card you'll have to have that will show that you're doing renovations.
So probably be able to pick that up on Thursday, Friday to Monday.
Tomorrow.
Okay.
I'll have it, you can just come to the planning office and they'll be in this
Okay.
reception area.
Okay.
Okay? All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Welcome, have
much.
a good night. All right. So, I guess since that was it, I guess we'll move on to new business.
Yes.
And I think the Mine Tree Pine Award, and I got Molly's email, so I.
Yep.
Okay.
So, the next item is the Mine Tree Pine Award. There were two projects that were submitted for the awards this year. And just in terms of background, as I scroll through to some of the pictures, this is an annual award that is initiates through the Historic Preservation Commission. The awards are basically for projects that have had significant renovation work, we've had residential projects, we've had this year an apartment complex and also a commercial establishment recognized. So the first one, and these were nominated by Molly Whitlatch, who is formerly on the Historic Preservation Commission. this is known as the Red Cross building, but also I guess they call it now the
Red House.
Red House.
Old Red House. It's the second newest house on the block, they call it the Old Red House.
It's really nice. I've seen the advertisement for it.
So these are, and I'm not sure, Catherine, I'm going to promote you to a panelist. I believe that Catherine is a representative of the project.
Okay.
So let's see if I can get her on. Catherine, you're able to unmute yourself if you'd like.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm going to scroll through some of these pictures, but you're welcome to describe the renovation that's been ongoing.
Yeah, been ongoing. Let me see.
Can you
So-
can you see the screen with the pictures?
What's that?
Can you see the screen? Can you see the?
I do, yeah. So if you look, if you scroll it down a little bit, or the other way, sorry. So okay, that top left corner, I think that's a bedroom. Yeah, I think that's a bedroom in the two-bedroom apartment downstairs, and then the room on the other side is a bedroom, the other bedroom in that two-bedroom apartment. And the hallway is no longer there. Wow, it looks so different. That one there with the fireplace, that's the kitchen in the one-bedroom apartment. The fireplace is still there, although it's inactive. That bathroom is still there, but it's completely different. And yeah, the upstairs is now two-bedroom, 1.5 bath apartments. Huh. Oh, there you go. Can't even recognize it.
Do you have
So
any? Do you have any?
the name of the old Red House in homage to the old Red Cross. The Red Cross wouldn't let them use the name or their old sign. Initially, they were going to let them use the old sign they had hanging out there, but somebody in Corpus said you couldn't use it, so that's why it's the old Red House.
These are some additional pictures.
From Tom Cowan.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Tom. Oh, I thought that was a window. It is a window. Yeah, Tom, I don't even have to say he did amazing work because we all know Tom does amazing work.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'll bet. You know, and I'm glad because now we have a good relationship with a really cool guy and his wife. Wow, look at that.
You guys did that. You guys should be commended for saving and restoring, having us restore all the windows. They were mostly in really good shape, and I think it was a big deal that you went ahead and did the project and kept all the old windows.
Kenny was persistent. I mean, he had to jump through a lot of hoops, and you know, the window thing kind of got him a little bit just because we knew the undertaking. But Tom, that was before we were introduced to you, and so you restored some hope. A little bit was lost, and you restored it, and it looks fantastic. And I don't know if any of you know, initially, we were advised to tear the building down. And I mean, just looking at it now, I'm sure everybody's glad he didn't.
Well, the pictures look fantastic, and so essentially, the HPC typically votes in favor of the project. So should the HPC, you know, act favorably on this, then the item will actually go to city council, and there'll be a formal presentation with a plaque that, that you can hang on the property.
That would be nice if that happened.
So that typically happens, you know, we typically go through this process every year between May and June. So do any commission members have any questions for Catherine? Any comments?
It looks really good. So much better. It looks very, I want to live there. I think I have a place to live. I would probably live there.
Go to my website, you can apply.
I gotta have, but no, I think y'all did a good job, so.
They did great contractors, and Kendi had spent all day out of town unexpectedly and was en route back home. That's when he couldn't join, so he did want me to pass on his apologies. So, yeah, they did a great job. Kendi's got a good eye. The architect we used, John Fleischman, took the challenge on, and he knew it was going to be a challenge, and it certainly was. But I think he did a great job. Everybody did a great job.
Does any commission members have any questions or additional comments?
It looks beautiful on the inside.
Thanks. It does. It's very peaceful, each one. So, any questions?
I don't have any questions.
All right.
Are there any?
Well, thank you all.
Did anybody in the public want to comment or have any suggestions?
Would you buy the house across Tarpley?
We would love to. We would love to. That one's a little tricky. But if anybody has a contact name and number, pass it on. Pass it on to me. Because that could be a beautiful place too.
That probably needs even more work.
What's that?
I'm sure it needs even more work.
Yeah, probably.
So I have a
Probably.
The pictures, while they're good, they do not do this place justice. If you haven't seen it, make every effort to go into it because it's amazing. And my comment is, Catherine, you need to know and you need to tell Kende what a contribution to the neighborhood this project was. I mean, Tom and I were riding through tonight and we were talking about it. It's an amazing sort of expansion of what's going on in the neighborhood. So kudos to both of y'all.
I'll let him know you said that. That means a lot. Thank you.
I've just got the pictures of the outside and the inside up, and just a beautiful job that you guys have done to preserve and protect this building. I mean, this is a great example of you know, a little higher density within the local historic district with you know, retaining the character, and I know that the folks that have worked hard on this project have, you know, blood, sweat, and tears, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, good deal. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments?
How did they get the zoning for 4 units on that square footage lot? Was it originally an apartment house before it was Red Cross?
I think it used to be a doctor's office. It was actually placed there just as a doctor's office, and then it was apartments for a while, and then Red Cross took it. It's got a history.
Yeah.
It's just one of those that just kind of got put there, and it was whatever, whoever bought it got it. But I do remember, I think someone said it was a doctor's office at one time, before in the early days.
It was Dr. Dade's office and the upstairs was the clinic.
Our recollection too is that this went through a conditional rezoning application for the site.
Because the last time I went to a meeting here 20 years ago, my neighbor was trying to get out of the zone. the historic district, because the way the zoning laws were changed, if he had a major loss on his apartment house, he could not rebuild it as an apartment house, it had to be a single-family unit. And his lawyer did a terrible job of making this case, because what it does is it disincentivizes people with an apartment house to keep it up, because they had a high risk of, I mean, if a tree fell on the house or whatever, they had a risk of having to build it back single-family and losing the income. So his lawyer didn't make the case very well for that, but that's what I realized afterwards, that what his problem was. Of course, he's sold out and died, but I just wonder if anybody in the commission realized that's what happened in the late 90s or early aughts.
And your name, sir?
Ralph Lastly,
Lastly?
yes,
Okay. And your address?
409 West Davis.
Thank you. I don't think there's any other thoughts on this one.
I don't, I mean, finally someone did something with that building.
Do you want to act on this one, each of them separately, and make a motion to recommend?
Is this the only one that was?
There's two.
Okay, let me, okay, yeah, we can see both and then
Okay.
we can go from there. Let's,
All right, so we'll move on to the other property, and that one, let's see if I can get to this. This one I received pictures just before the meeting, so they were not in your packet.
Jamie, I'm going to make a comment while you're pulling that up about the little red house. What they invested in was I took out every window sash, there were 68 window sashes, and took them back to my shop in Glencoe and completely stripped all the paint and glazing, took the glass out, did any repairs, primed them, reglazed them, put new ropes, so they went under a major restoration. They invested in that, and if they maintain them, they'll last another 100 years.
How many pages did you break?
Oh, maybe 1 out of 10.
Better than I did.
Break them when you do it. Keep, when you have big ones break in the corner, you save those and put them down.
so this one is,
Okay, so this is, and these are the only pictures that I received on this one, but you may have all already been to the establishment just down the street from here. So this is the Carolina Sundries kind of grocery restaurant that just opened up the street.
so this is a downtown business?
This is a downtown business.
Does that fall under, does it
Well,
fall under,
because Beer Works also got one too.
oh, okay, okay, I was just wondering.
Yeah. So that, I don't think that there's any, this is just recognition of, and I don't think they have to be within the local historic district, but, so this was also another nomination by Molly Whitlatch. And I don't know that there are any, I'm not recognizing Casey Lewis is the person who I received the pictures from, or Beechwood Metal email, so I'm not seeing that as any of the attendees. If there are any members of the attendees who are involved with this project, feel free to raise your hand and I'll be able to promote you as a panelist. But in any event, these are the pictures that I have received regarding the I guess the existing conditions. Well, this is the restoration really, because this is the bar that's there, and then there's food being prepped here. This is some of the tile work, I guess, that was underway. It really, it really doesn't look like this at all anymore. It's a store, it's open, and they've done a fantastic job. There's a lot of local support to local foods and vendors in the area, and I would recommend to probably pull up their website if you'd like to see more pictures. Maybe there's some on there, but and if you'd like, we can also hold this off until next time. But it really is a beautiful, beautiful business right in downtown.
Is that Blanchard's? where Blanchard's used to be, right?
Yeah, there
Davis and
There were roasters that redone that area. Oh, no, they're right next to it, they're in the Blanchard's building,
yeah, that's what the two-story Davis and whatever the street library is on.
yeah.
Spring. Yeah.
So is the before on the left and the after on the right?
The pictures, don't
Did they put in the tile? I know, did they put in
No.
the tile, or they took out the tile and did wood?
Honestly, I know that this is what it looks, this shape of the bar looks like what it is now, but I can't speak specifically to it. And I wish there was somebody on who could. Maybe I can try and get,
I want to see some pictures of what it looks like.
It's a lot nicer. They built like wooden shelves down one, the other to the right wall, all the way up and down. It's kind of like a historic German store almost with shelves.
What's the name of this?
Carolina Sundries. And it's a
Oh, yeah.
restaurant, it's a lunch restaurant and a little bitty grocery store on the great, dress food desert downtown.
Yeah.
it was in the,
Local, local artist, a family, a couple that have a business doing mill sculpture. They're really good, nationally recognized. They're doing this on the side. I hope I'm describing it right.
Yeah, it's, even just poking in the windows from outside, you can see inside, it's beautiful. They've got floor to ceiling, built-in shelves for all of the different groceries, and there's tables and seating kind of up.
That looks, to me, it looks like they're taking out the tile. I'm just curious.
I think they're taking it out.
Okay. I was in there once when they first opened, it was super cute, I just didn't pay attention to the flooring.
So I don't know if you have any questions for me. I'm not sure if I can be able to give you any more information, but
Yeah, that's my only thing.
do you mind just checking?
Small town grocery general store.
Although I think it's great for downtown.
Yeah, it is.
Downtown.
Especially people work at Blackboard and.
If it is, then I'll do it. We're just checking to see if the website has any pictures that show the restoration that might be helpful for you guys.
Yeah, they got some,
Oh.
so carolinasundries.com.
Yeah, they've got a whole different flooring in the, it's like a white linoleum kind of, or vinyl,
They got a little photo gallery, which is
yeah. Super cute.
So Jamie, I have a question. With the Minotry Pond, they used to give 2 awards, one residential and one commercial. Have y'all been giving 2 or 1 award?
I think last year it was just one, from my recollection, it was just one property and it was only residential. And I'm not sure about the year before, it might have been, was that the Beer Works year?
We did your work.
And
we
was that
did
May
one,
Rosary?
And the Rosary,
Yeah. So this year, the residential multifamily would be one, and then this would be a commercial one. I guess it's just depending upon the work that's been done and whoever's nominating.
Yeah.
So these, let's see. That's what it looks like now in the inside. Maybe about.
For a short time, it was like a membership nightclub kind of thing for a very short period of time, and then.
Oh, no, where this is where John Plageman's office was, the architect.
But I mean, before that, it was right before it was this, it was like a nightclub, a membership, I'm trying to think of the name of it.
Jazz something, wasn't it?
What was it?
Jazz something?
Something like that, yeah. Yeah, I can't think of the name of it.
It always looks like it's closed.
Yeah, we need to be to the
It's
street.
dark.
I thought that was right on
Where did you see the pictures?
Those are like.
That was it?
Yeah.
Okay, so it didn't have it before.
No,
It looks like the floor is completely different. That tile looks like it's either poured concrete or something else.
And that wood before could have been like vinyl plank flooring or something awful, so. It's really cool.
They have good food. I highly recommend it. Anyway, that's all I have on those two projects, so. I don't know if you want to see if anybody from the audience has any questions or from the Zoom participants.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Anybody on Zoom wish to comment?
Use the raise hand feature
Sure.
or dial *9. Okay.
So then, to do this, what is this? This is my first one.
Yeah, I would just say that you're going to ask for a motion for the HPC to recommend both projects as submitted to go to the city council for their, for an award and recognition.
So we can do them both, right?
I don't,
So I think it can't hurt. I mean,
yeah, I mean, unless there's any objection to that, I don't see why not.
I mean, I don't. All right, so why not? So need a motion to approve both of these nominations for the Pine Tree Pine Award.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Jamie, will you do a roll call, please?
Sure. Chair Ulis,
Yes.
Lori Bryan,
Yes.
Josh Atkins,
Yes.
and sorry, Wendy Geis.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll prepare that to go to city council, and then we'll let the property owners and applicants know.
So Jamie, do I need to present it? Because I think that's what the rule is.
I will let you know when it will be,
Okay.
and the city council's been holding their meetings typically in person. There might be a virtual option too, so
Okay.
either way.
Okay.
All right?
All right. So I guess the next thing is we have the update on the design standards, and I believe we have our consultants with us.
Yeah, let me, you guys want to come up?
Sure.
Yeah, any
Or, I
updates?
don't know if you,
I'll
can you take notes?
I'll take notes, and I'll
It's good if you don't take it.
I'll chime in
Yeah,
as I need
please
to.
do. All right. And by the way, as far as, we've got a bunch of slides that are kind of introductory to the project in general. And I don't know, I get a sense that almost most of the folks in the room are pretty familiar with it. I don't know about the folks on Zoom, so I can go into as much detail or as little as y'all think is fit. I'll just kind of go along. If I'm going too slow, give me some motion. If I'm going too fast, give me another motion. Or just say, I guess it's an intimate enough group we can just talk. And did you say, Jim, we put this forward to?
Well,
What
because
is
it's
it?
a PDF, I don't know.
Oh,
But you can
yeah.
enhance it, let's see.
We'll give it a shot. And see what
Go right ahead and you want to try. There you go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, this has a little wheel. This is exciting. Okay, so you all ready to get started? So I'm Phil Walker and with the Walker Collaborative, and Keith Covington, who's being our note taker tonight, but a major contributor to the project. Did I go backwards? Or, yeah. That's kind of weird. Maybe it doesn't seem to be working.
No, there you go.
Oh, okay, there we go. Yeah, and of course, staff, Conrad's here, Jamie's here. I think that's the only staff members here. The state's very involved. Project Advisory Committee, you can see the list. Tom's here, Wendy's here, and we have a bunch of other members involved. And what we're going to talk about tonight is we'll have several slides to give just kind of an overview of the project. And the second bullet point, by the way, we don't really have a section on it. I just realized we inadvertently left that in. We are going to talk about the existing process, but just not as a separate section. And then we're actually going to go through the whole document. Now we're just going to hit key pages and maybe the way to do this. I could go through the whole thing, or if people have a question when we get to a certain section, unless we get bogged down on some one particular issue, I think we could entertain comments and questions as we're going through it. And then I've got a few slides that just summarize some of the input we've received so far on the draft document. And, you know, we said discussion, but we can kind of do it as we go. And then we'll just talk about the next steps. So that's what we'll do. And most of you probably know what design standards are. You know, they address the landscape of buildings in a locally designated historic district and landmarks. So any kind of alterations or relocations or demolitions are regulated. Of course, there are state laws that give local governments the authority to do this. And within the local regs, the Unified Development Ordinance, there's a specific preservation provisions. The standards are going to be adopted by City Council. It applies to just 2 districts that you have, even though you have National Register districts, there are 2 local districts that actually have protections. And of course, those are Glencoe Mill Village and West Davis Fountain Place. And the standards are administered by the Preservation Commission and city staff. And there are certificates of appropriateness to allow people to do what they want to do, unless it's considered maintenance. If it's considered a major work, you go before the full commission. If it's minor, it's an administrative approval by staff. And next one. The intent, and this is actually all listed in the UDO, and I'm not going to read through all these, but you can kind of get a sense of what the intent is. It's about, you know, preservation and protecting the history and historic integrity of these districts. You know, there are educational aspects to it. Civic beauty, stabilizing and even enhancing property values. And there's been a lot of work on that issue nationally, by the way, and in the state. And then contributing just to general health and welfare of the city. There are 3 key goals. I mean, there are a lot of goals with this project, but 3 of them particularly are to modernize the standards. For example, things like materials that maybe are new relative to the existing set of standards. Streamlining the process, and then creating efficient and user-friendly standards. And just for example, even though the current standards are not bad, but they don't have a table of contents. And that doesn't make it easy to navigate them. So just things like that I think we can improve on. The existing process for COAs, you know, this project's going to address the streamlining I just mentioned, and that's something that City Council's indicated it wants to see, and that was also reflected in our first advisory committee meeting. The staff is doing an assessment of the processes, which includes the goal of streamlining to the extent that it's practical. You can't always streamline everything. To include legal, statutory, and UDO review. And there are 2 main roles of the Preservation Commission as far as processes. One is this quasi-judicial process, because they're deciding on major certificates of appropriateness. And then secondly, an advisory role for the historic standards, the boundaries of the districts, and architectural surveys. And the new standards are going to dictate, you know, what proposed work is going to be major, minor, or general maintenance. And of course, as we've said many times, the goal is to try to shift as many things as we can and still be responsible and still preserve the districts from major to minor, from minor to maintenance. So here's where we are in the process. It's basically 4 steps. We've completed the first 3 as far as all the background work and actually creating the draft document. But again, it's a draft. And this final stage is really going to entail a lot of meetings and additional input, so we can revise it and hopefully have it wrapped up by, I guess, July, or sometime in July. As far as input on the processes, oh, this is the one that's already, yeah, I knew we had, that's the same one, it looked very familiar. Okay, so here's the table of contents. What I'm actually going to do, after the slide, we have the entire document. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to kind of just slow down on the key pages, you know, like the first few pages of each section, but we're obviously going to try to get through this in a timely way. But again, if you have questions or comments, just stop me. But you can see how it's set up. There's the introduction section, design review process, historic context. It talks not only about the history of the districts, but also building types and different styles. And then the design standards, the real meat of it in section D. And then the glossary of terms and the appendix, which is appropriate street trees. And that already existing current standards. Okay.
You gotta be on the PDF. Yeah, there you
Oh,
go.
I didn't know it had to be on it. Okay. Learning, the old dog's learning new tricks. Okay, so the first thing, the introduction, it talks about benefits of historic districts and landmarks. The first part of it's just very general. In fact, it's from the National Trust, and maybe everything doesn't necessarily apply to Burlington, but it gives kind of an overview of the types of benefits, and also the benefits of certified local governments, which you're a part of, which comes with grant money for certain projects. Then these are the benefits specific to Burlington, looking at the investment tax credits, both national, federal and state, and technical assistance from the State Preservation Office, potential benefits for zoning. We talk about the state legislation for historic zoning and the design standards intent, which comes right out of the UEO. The next section, design review process, we talk about local districts and the criteria for designating districts, local landmarks, and then we talk about the different review bodies of the whole process, the Preservation Commission, of course, the Design Review Committee, which is something that's not active now, but we're looking to probably reactivate it. We think that could perform an important role and kind of expedite some things. Talk about the COA process and what types of things trigger the need for COA. Talk about work that's considered non-reviewable, in other words, it's maintenance, minor work that's approved by staff, major work approved by the commission, the emergency situations, which we're going to expand on a little bit, but in other words, if something happens to a property, how do you still protect your property and move on without maybe waiting a month for the commission to meet? And then there's this matrix, the next few pages, this is something new. The meat of it was already in the old standards, but we've kind of reorganized it and reformatted it. And the first table is just for things within the public right-of-way, and what types of actions would require would be considered major work versus minor versus maintenance, that does not require a COA. And then the next, I think, 3 pages are the public and private property work, which is more common. And we've organized it by structures is the first part of it, followed by structures continued, then landscaping, then other site features, and so that's how that's organized. And again, we've taken certain things and we've documented this and moved them, to the right, from major to minor, from minor to COA. But it's something we're still working on. I just dropped this right into this PDF. It's actually going to be in the document. We've got an earlier draft of this, but this is the whole process. You can see, the whole process for getting the COA. Next is historic context and a little bit of history on the community and its development, particularly its kind of physical development and economic. We still need to add some historic photos to that. Then we talk about districts. We talk about, what is National Register designation? How does that compare to local designation? And then we talk about each of the 2 current local districts, Glencoe, Mill Village, and then West Davis, and there's a map of it. And then landmarks. We're going to get some more photos tomorrow. And then Keith worked up these, I think these are really nice to have, these so-called anatomy of a building diagrams. And we have 3 different building types, and it just helps people have a better conversation when they're talking about old buildings to kind of know the terminology. This is industrial. That's the first one we've done for industrial, this kind of diagram. Here's residential. And then we have this whole section, and I'll kind of gloss through it. This is the section they were considering putting in the appendix. I think the Preservation Commission thought it makes sense just to leave them where they are right now. But we talk about commercial mixed-use building types And by the way, in case anybody wonders, well, gee, there's hardly any commercial mixed-use building types in either of the two districts, but there are some, and there's certain areas that are zoned for commercial use. So, you know, if you have a little bit, you gotta address it just like you would single level detail as you would say residential, which is really the dominant use. And then we go in for the commercial, for example, on Gothic revival, and we kind of look at the, you know, point out the parts of it and talk about local examples. Same thing with neoclassical, Art Deco. Then we go into residential building types. We talk about them kind of generally, and then we go into the ones that exist. Not that this is about the only one. It's not like pure Gothic revival that you have in town. Queen Anne, there are quite a few, obviously in the West Davis, Fountain Place neighborhood. And we talk about vernacular mill house buildings and others, the type you would find outside of Glencoe. Tudor Revival, Colonial Revival, American Foursquare, Craftsman Bungalow, Dutch Colonial Revival, which you got a lot of, by the way, West Davis, Fountain Place. I was kind of surprised. It's not that common of a style kind of nationally, but it certainly is in that district. Even garages with that style, that was pretty cool. Institutional building types, neoclassical, eclectic, that means I don't know, I gotta scratch my head. Eclectic.
It means it's a mix of styles.
That's right. It's a Renaissance.
It's not a pure revival.
That's right. Art modern, and then industrial type buildings.
Phil, you might want to mention about the adaptive reuse, that there's some just information.
Yeah, that was something we were asked to put in there, just to kind of make the point. That last paragraph talks about the potential for adaptive reuse of this kind of building, like they've done with the Mays hosiery for residential, so that's which is pretty cool. And there's a picture of it right there, bottom left. And then we get to the design standards. So there's a lot of, we talk about the Secretary of Interior standards, which all design standards are based on, and really just go into more detail on those. So we've got the key standards listed. We talk about visibility, because a lot of times these standards talk about, well, if it's visible from the street, you do it this way. If it's not, then maybe you have more latitude. So we have these diagrams that show kind of, and it's a little bit obvious that where high visibility is, moderate and low. And they don't really have much in the way of alleys here, correct?
That's
In
correct.
the neighborhood. So, which is a game changer. I live in a 1920s neighborhood, we have alleys, so that, that makes things a little bit different. Contextual compatibility. Things like, and then contributing versus non-contributing buildings, which is really important, both maybe on the level of scrutiny you give on design review, but also if you're doing infill development, you want to go off of contributing buildings as influencing new infill as opposed to some 1970s infill or something. And then this little thing, we have a note about the check mark in the green circle versus the red circle. We use that in our photos of good examples and not so good examples. We really emphasize the case about deteriorated material and trying to avoid replacement, because believe it or not, even a window frame like that with epoxy and other treatments you can actually save. So we want to kind of hit home on that. Retention of historic fabric. And then the rest of this section really is about building components. We start off with walls, and there's kind of a pattern here. You'll notice we always start off with, after we kind of talk about the topic in general terms, we talk about maintenance. And of course, maintenance is not a standard that goes before the city. So we always have bullet points for the maintenance issues. And then for the design standards, there's three categories. There's preservation, there's repair, and replacement. And we kind of use that same approach for each component. Then we go to
which is I was just going to say, which is also the hierarchy that you want to, kind of goes back to the box that said retention of historic fabric. You want to preserve first, then repair, and as a
last resort,
replace.
Exactly. Yeah. So it kind of builds on that idea. So then foundations we address, and you'll notice throughout the document these little sidebars for Glencoe, because Glencoe is so specific. Whether you're talking about the roof types or whatever, the porches, the rear, the L's, the rear additions. So there are a lot of little call-outs specifically for Glencoe, because because the other things may apply very well to, say, West Davis Fountain Place. But for Glencoe, there's something much more specific that we have. So we talk about roofs, and also another feature throughout, these little links to the National Park Service briefs on very specific issues. So they're kind of throughout. Again, Glencoe, on roofs, doors and windows. By the way, this is not far from where I live. We try to, virtually every photo except maybe one, the negative examples are from out of town, because we don't like to make people mad at us. So we show out of town. In this case, you can't see real well, but there's solar panels, and that's on a corner location of the street right there. So you try to avoid that, even though we're all for solar power. Talking about the efficiency of historic windows. We talk about old growth wood further on, and about repairing windows, which Tom knows something about based on the one project we saw. I'm sure countless others. So we get into storefronts, and again, even though your two current districts don't have a lot of commercial, you could get other future districts, and again, there are some commercial uses in zoning, even if they're small areas, in the two existing ones. So we get into storefronts a little bit, canopy and awnings. Glencoe, porches, just the porch posts, like there are basically 4 different styles we've identified. Then this kind of helps define the difference between canopies versus awnings versus balconies and so forth. Materials, okay, so we start off with masonry after a general comment, what to do, what not to do on the left. I love the picture on the right from Glencoe where they've given you this educational opportunity to see Nagi. They left this panel of glass, which is really cool. And we get into wood, we get into metal, we talk about old growth wood right here, and the benefits of that. And then we get into artificial materials, right? And, so we actually have a check, you're going to see a matrix in a second that talks about which materials you can use or can't use, and then there's a lot of gray area depending on the situation. But assuming there are other materials that may surface and start to be used, we at least have some criteria that you might judge them by, even if they're not currently listed. So that's just kind of thinking about the future. And then here's the matrix. We start off with walls. So up here, here's the material. Is it permitted? Is that me?
Yeah.
Moving it? Okay.
Oh, it's just me checking to see if there's any comments in the chat.
Oh, okay, thanks. I thought I lost control. Permitted, maybe, depending on the circumstances, and prohibited, no matter what. And by the way, I would say that a lot of, in addition to what I showed before, the matrix of major, minor maintenance, there are going to be a lot of revisions, I think, to that one. And I think there'll be quite a few to this one, or at least some that we've already identified. Foundation materials, roofs, doors and windows, storefronts, canopies and awnings, porches, porticos, balconies, and decks. And then we get into historic building additions. And here's a photograph of a well-done residential addition looking at the back of it. Talk about scale and design. And of course, the whole idea is about the additions always being subordinate, visually, scale-wise, to the original building. Talk about there's such a unique pattern to outbuildings and additions for Glencoe, so we talk about that. Criteria to follow for additions. Then we get into new buildings. And we talk about new buildings, these are the general standards for new buildings. And we get into materials as well. Then we talk about new residential buildings specifically. And these are all new buildings. By the way, this one's real close to my house, like about 2 blocks away. I think that one's the one that's actually on my street. Really interesting. And they're all new. And we just talk about, these are existing historic, but we've identified the 4 major building types or styles, whatever you want to call it, even though they're very vernacular in Glencoe. Then we get into new commercial mixed-use buildings. And then industrial buildings, which, we don't go into a lot of detail, but odds that there's going to be new infill of industrial is pretty low. Institutional, we don't get into a lot of detail on those either. And one reason is because institutional buildings, if you're going to let any kind of building sort of deviate from the norm on urban design principles and architecture, it's institutional buildings that let them kind of stand out a little bit more to kind of underscore their significance. Then we get into outbuildings and site design. And these are some of those great, garages in West Davis, Fountain Place. And this is the one, there's the house, Dutch Colonial, and there's a Dutch Colonial outbuilding. And then Glencoe, of course, is very unique. A lot of board and batten, we notice. Not always, but oftentimes the addition or outbuildings are board and batten, which, of course, the primary building never is board and batten, or at least I can't think of examples.
Yeah, very few, maybe a couple.
If any, yeah. Site design, steps and terraces and so forth. Here's an example of a retaining wall in Omaha, where I did design guidelines, but you don't want this in your neighborhood. But you do want that. That's existing in West Davis, Fountain Place. Chain link fence, that's a great Queen Anne, totally covered with vegetation. Now, I don't know what it looks like in the wintertime, but
It looks the same.
looks the same, just kind of brown, maybe.
That's my old house.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, it looks the same. The previous owners planted the ivy and, yeah. it's
That's
great.
awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hides the chain link just so that.
Yeah, I had to touch it to it, like, yeah, it's chain link under here. But they wasn't poison ivy.
We got rid of all that. There was a lot.
Oh, was it? Okay. And then we talk about, features in the streetscape, archaeology, basically stop digging when you find something interesting. That's what that boils down to. Building relocation, demolition, and demolition by neglect. And you do have provisions in your ordinance about demolition by neglect. I think I had a question, someone had asked, do we have that or whatever, but you do. Yeah. Criteria, and this comes right out of your ordinance, the criteria to consider demolitions. And same with demolition, determining demolition by neglect. Disaster preparedness, and this is really kind of generic. It references, it has an introductory couple of pages from a source, because this is kind of its own science, to be quite honest, on flood adaptation. But the most important thing is that it gives you a link to the detailed information that we excerpt for the first 2 pages. Then we get into signage, and that's the one area, I know staff plans to sit down and kind of look at the sign regs already in the UDO and look at what we came up with to decide how they relate. And I mean, there's a chance we may scrap this whole section, I don't know, but kind of depends what y'all decide, I think.
Some of the feedback that we've gotten from the various meetings was that it was important to have separate signage, so we'd like to hear more on feedback on that.
Okay. And the thing about signage, it's like when you write sign standards, they're never quick and easy, because think about how many types of signs there are. I mean, you've got window signs, you've got facade mounted signs, you've got projecting signs, you've got this kind of sign on the awning. There's like a lot of different types of signs, and you gotta account for all of them. So painted, facade painted signs. You got these ghost signs that are important to preserve when you got them. That looks familiar. It's got a nice green check. There's, sandwich board signs, that's at the depot. We talk about lighting. And then, that's not a real common issue, but for residential lodging. And then we address murals. And the main thing about murals, like you see the check here versus, the strike through here. This is a side of a building, and there are no architectural features to compete with visual, right? And then this, actually, They painted it over, there's like door openings and things like that that it kind of visually competes with. Okay, input on the standards, and this is not totally comprehensive, but it's a lot of what we've gotten, particularly in writing and some what we heard in meetings. So the general benefits, at least one stakeholder feels that we ought to take remember the general benefits are generic. They may or may not apply specifically to Burlington. So I totally get the thinking behind it, but it turned out, I know most of the folks wanted to go ahead and still leave that in there, even though they are kind of general, because the next section gets into specific benefits for Burlington, like tax credits and things like that. On the design review process, one thing we need to add, and this was brought out, is we look at the emergency situations from the perspective of disasters like fires or floods or things like that. But there are also emergencies where just some structural member of a building collapses. So we need to clarify that. That's something we're going to add on there. The minor and major work matrix, this is where most of these comments are, is in that category. So, the opinions are kind of mixed. I know the city would like to move more things from major to minor, from minor to maintenance. Not everybody feels that way. It's kind of a mixed bag. I think a lot of people do feel that way. When it comes to the matrix on structures, there's a consensus. I'm just going to have to read this because I don't remember all this. There's a consensus that removal of non-working and non-wood shutters should not require a COA, which they do in the current standards. We totally agree with that. It happens to be one of those things that's in your current standards, and it had that part with a sentence about replacing the windows and doors, which you should review and not make maintenance. So we just need to separate that out, but we agree with that. On structures, the next one, at least one stakeholder feels that removing, replacing, and or adding windows and doors, even if it's not visible from the street, should be major instead of minor, for basically two reasons. One is that neighbors may see it, and secondly, there may be some kind of landscaping that makes it not visible from the street, but the landscaping might disappear in 4 years or something like that. So that's the thinking behind that one. On landscaping, a lot of stakeholders think that most of these should be minor or maintenance rather than major, because a few of these are major, including, when it comes to topping trees, a lot of people have to do that, and to have to get a COA would be a hassle, and they're hoping that can become maintenance. Also, the trunk caliper size, that is the diameter, the standard that's used, it's funny, in Glencoe, I think it's, 15 inches?
15 inches.
The CCRs say 12, and in West Davis Fountain Place, it's only 4, which seems kind of small. And so we think it makes sense to make that a bigger. I don't know what the magic number is. It's a little bit arbitrary, to be quite honest, with whatever we come up with, but something larger than 4. Maybe it's 8, maybe it's even 12. I'm not sure. Other site features, on C11, one stakeholder thinks that repairing or replacing exterior stairs, landings, and steps, even if it's compatible with the structure's design, should be at least minor instead of maintenance, where it is now. Since, because otherwise you're leaving that determination of whether it's compatible up to the property owner. So maybe we revise it to say, if original or something to that effect. Other site features, C21, most stakeholders feel that fences in front yards and side yards, if it's a corner lot, should be minor instead of major. And I would tend to agree with that, especially assuming that the fence standards are clear enough. And that's one litmus test. By the way, when you're trying to decide, okay, is this major or minor, I think the litmus test is go back and look at the standards and let staff decide, hey, can I make the call on that and feel like I'm on solid footing, that it's pretty black and white. And there's some things that shouldn't really be black and white, that need the group thinking of a commission. So, also, multiple stakeholders feel that the installation of features like trellises, fountains, and gazebos should be minor instead of major if they're not visible from the street and they're not impacting the building. And then we're almost through, by the way, so hang on. Section C, historic context, some have suggested moving this section. I mentioned that before in the appendix, but most people think, and they were really talking, that's not totally true. It was really about the section on types and styles that was being contemplated to move, but I think we'll probably keep them where they are. And then finally, didn't need to highlight, I'm trying to do it. On the actual design standards in the building matrix, material matrix, when it comes to roofs, one person mentioned that we need to think more about flat roofs and materials that might be acceptable, like EDPM, and I don't even know what that is.
Yeah,
But the
it's
architect
just, it's a normal, that was an oversight, that should have been in there.
Cool,
So,
that'll be.
so I'm glad someone caught it.
Yeah, we need folks looking over our shoulder every day. Windows, one stakeholder suggested that frosted windows, right now we're saying frosted glass, for windows or doors should be prohibited, but at least one person thinks that for privacy purposes it should be allowed. And maybe it gets down to like whether it's on the front or maybe the rear of the building and stuff. So anyway, that's the input, and again, that I'm sure we've gotten more, but that's the stuff I had at least in writing. The next steps, and we'll of course have a discussion here in a second, but as I mentioned before, I showed you the outline, and really it's just this whole review and approval process, and we'll be continuing to make edits along the way. So, that was a lot.
So I have a couple of questions.
So, yeah.
Jamie, would it be helpful to have in this document the whole issue of Glencoe being under preservation covenants with design guidelines, and that being part of the process that you have to receive that letter?
Yeah, I think that, and it's even possible that we can make it clearer in that matrix. I don't want to keep adding stuff to it, the process matrix that we
Right.
got, but we could add.
But even if there's a blurb, something that says,
Absolutely.
before you even come to us.
Right.
You know what, here's what I think we ought to do. I think in the description of the districts, we ought to put it in there. In the standards, when we first introduce the standards, we ought to put it in there. We ought to make it pop out too, not just like hidden in the text. Maybe it's its own little bubble or something.
Sidebar or something.
Yeah, something, but we need to, I totally agree, we need to point that out. And then I think what we need to do is include when you look at it, I want to say it's a 22-page document, and the first part's all legal stuff, and then you get to the actual standards. I think we ought to take those standards and put them in the appendix. If we could, it's kind of a weird format, but if we could put them right in the appendix, it may not be a bad idea.
It's not a bad
Or
idea.
if we have it in a PDF form and the city's willing to put it on their website, we could put a link to it, a hyperlink.
That's another thing too.
Yeah, I
in
mean,
there.
it would be great to have it where people could actually access it, because
Sure.
there's enough turnover.
Because it took us a while to get, when we were trying to find it the other time, and so.
The other thing I'll mention is you've got down as original structures, some of those are infill.
Oh, really?
Some of them are.
Oh, in Glencoe?
Yeah, are you familiar with the infill out there?
No.
No.
Okay, there's a lot of infill, and in fact, the first infill was Country Living's House of the Year in 2001.
How about that?
If you could let us know, like, I mean, just, if you could just reference, like, on this page number,
Yeah.
that's,
That would be,
I
because
mean, we got a lot of
that's the thing.
photographs.
That's a testament to how well
You
they
can't tell.
have been designed and done.
Well, they're stringent about the design
Yeah.
guidelines for this. And the other thing about the foundations, I'll just mention this, I'll write it up.
Okay.
The foundations, those actually were all on piers, so what you'll see on the original structures is a reverse curtain, so that the piers indicated. If it's a straight foundation, that's new construction.
Okay.
Oh, that's what they did, because remember, we were talking, there's that little one-story red house
Yeah.
on the right as you
It's
go
infill,
north.
it's in.
And we were talking to the owner, and we were trying to figure out, we were like, are those historic foundations, or they didn't quite look it?
Now, most of those houses went up on
Okay,
jacks, and they had footings and foundations put
Okay.
under, but
Wow.
it was done to differentiate original structure from new structure.
that's really important.
So remind me, any sort of work that has to come through this body, it comes here first and then, no, it goes to foundation
You know,
first and
goes-
then
It
comes.
goes to
Oh.
Presidency, and they generate a letter once it's approved there. And that
Then it
letter
comes
has to
in.
come
Okay.
with the
Okay.
application here.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure I have that.
So tomorrow, we're gonna be able to go out in the field and photograph some things.
Come to Glencoe, I'll walk you around and show you what's what.
Well, okay, that would be great.
I'll show
And
you
that's what I was gonna
the
say, I was gonna say, at the very least, if you could just like email us the page number and photo, but yeah, we'd love to, we could meet you out there too.
Well, I'll just show you which ones are infill, if you want to photograph them and use those
That would be
as an
great.
example.
Okay, thank you.
I think there are seven new constructions. Something like that.
Okay, super. Other questions, comments?
Are there other comments from members of the audience or any attendees?
Will we be able to see this online somewhere?
Yep.
It is, we have a website dedicated to this project.
Okay.
Is the document online yet, though, or?
I hadn't seen it. That's why I came to meet, I
Yep.
hadn't seen it, okay.
You might want to read it right before bedtime if you want to sleep well.
Yeah, I've been several gaskets reading those. In the 90s.
I have
Several gaskets.
one more comment. Going back to the fences, where you're suggesting the front
Right.
fences may be appropriate. I guess my comment about that is since the focus of the overlay is to maintain the streetscape in most cases,
Yep.
that's a pretty major change to the streetscape when you start chopping it up by fences.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one I'm struggling with.
Okay, so right now what we're looking at is, or what people would like to see happen, is that I think in the draft we've got it as, well, we got it as major, but it's been suggested that we shift it to minor so that staff will review. And I think that, again, the litmus test is going to be, let's go back and look at our fence standards. And if they're really clear, it might be okay to move them to minor, but if there's enough gray area and we just can't make it black and white because of the nature of the topic, then maybe it should stay major, which is what we have right now, I think, in the.
Yeah, I mean, I'm struggling even with moving
Yeah.
to minor because it is a streetscape issue. And as you drive down those streets, when you start putting fences up.
There's a big visual impact.
Yeah,
You're
it
right.
changes the
Yeah,
character of the
It
streetscape.
does. And right now it is in major. We've got it in major right now, as far as I know, so it's just whether we, okay.
Like that, backyard fences aren't a problem, but it's that
Right.
street.
Yeah. And of course, they don't even allow fences in the front at all in Glencoe.
They've never been allowed in the other district, to my knowledge.
Oh, really?
They are,
They have always been turned down when I was on the commission, it's been a long time.
oh, okay.
But they are allowed, I mean, based on the standards they are, but maybe they were turned down.
Yeah, but they've been turned down every time that I know of.
So,
Red Cross building has one.
I wonder if the standards, the current standards just aren't real clear, because otherwise if they're clear and you come in with an application that meets it, I guess they didn't need it.
Well, it became the whole discussion of, you know, if the purpose of the standards was to maintain the streetscape,
Yeah,
when you start putting front yard fences, unless you're talking about a low cast iron that's appropriate to
Sure.
put in or something that's further back, it starts to chop up that streetscape, and so it's been turned down when it's come in.
but you would think that the current standards would just say, no fences in the front, you know, if that's their decision on it. Anyway, but
We'll
we're,
take a look at it.
yeah, we'll figure that
Any other comments? Because I see, I think it's Michelle that has her hand raised there. So is there any other questions before I go to comments, before I go to her? Okay. Hi, Michelle, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Anyway, everything that I addressed that I had any concern about has been addressed. I really appreciate the attention to comments that were written and sent on in. I'm listening to Lynn talk about front yard fences, and I understand the concern. I know that the zoning code requires them to be short, way shorter than the ones from the side lot of the house back. But I do agree that the problem with putting them minor for front yard fences is the neighbors don't get notified and have an opportunity to be heard on it if it's not major. So that is, you know, just something I think we should think about. We don't have a multitude of front yard fences in the West Burlington district. And it seems that maybe, you know, I might only take one or two, and then it snowballs, and then everybody's got their yards fenced in, and we lose that open streetscape appearance, which is very neighborly and attractive. So we might want to really think about whether moving, you know, if it's not in major, then the neighbors won't really know anything about it until the fences go up. And we should want to hear what their neighbors think about fences. And the same thing about changing the windows and doors on the rear of the house. Neighbors, we use our backyards for entertaining, for recreation, for exercise, for working on our houses, all kinds of stuff. And when the back of the house changes, when original windows and doors are lost, etc., you know, they're lost forever. And I do think that those changes should be major because it gives the neighbors an opportunity to know what's going on and be heard if they have either an objection or a suggestion of how it would affect them, and they may have really good suggestions on how it could just be modified a bit so that it's not offensive to them. And that's it.
Michelle, if you don't mind, can you state for the record what your address is?
Sure, 715 West Front Street, Burlington.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions? Or anybody? I think everybody's happy about the standards. I know I am.
I'll just also add that the draft has been sent to the State Historic Preservation Office because they need to review the project as we go on. So we have not received comments back from them yet. So that is you know, part of this process as well.
I'm going to go on the record here, to get on the record, just to say thank you guys. You've done a great job. It's a difficult thing to do, and what you've done really looks good.
Thank you.
And we appreciate your all's input. You're going to help us make them better, so.
Yeah, that's what helps shape
That's-
this into
yeah.
a really good use of it also.
Thank you.
So in terms of kind of just setting the stage for next steps and timeline of things, we will, so today is May 10th, it's the public kickoff, not kicked off, but one of the public workshops, along with the HBC. We're still working with the advisory committee, so we will probably have an additional advisory committee meeting, and then moving forward to accomplish the timeline that's set forth to have this project move forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission and then City Council by the end of the deadline for the grant, which is in September. I'll be reaching out to the HBC members after we have the advisory committee meeting to talk about another special HBC meeting for consideration, hopefully to move the project forward. And depending upon how things go, we might have another advisory committee meeting, but it looks like we're moving forward in the right direction. And then we'll either have a recommendation, hopefully from the HPC later this month or into June, and then we will work towards the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting in June, the end of June. That would be June 27th, and City Council into July with a public hearing in August. So,
And that's pretty consistent with the detailed out schedule that you put together. So the next time I'll be here will be May May 23rd. That's planning commission, planning and zoning.
May 23rd would be, that would be a special HBC meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Special, okay, I don't know why I was thinking planning,
Yeah.
but I am gonna be here on that.
We will have to look at our schedule that we have together. I know we've been kind of thinking about just ways to get another advisory committee meeting in, wrap that up. Make sure that everybody's got comments, because I think we're still waiting on a couple folks for outstanding comments.
Okay.
Yep.
So right now, I can keep my travel plans for the 23rd to be here. I mean, the good news is like Southwest is good about, you just get a credit for your next flight.
Right. Assuming that we can get a quorum for the HPC, then yes, that would be,
Okay.
yep.
So, Jamie, what action would be at that meeting? Would that be a recommendation to the planning commission at that point?
If the HPC is ready to.
Right, yeah, of course. I'm saying, like, if
Yes,
they are
that would
ready to
be-
move forward.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's the next step for this body to move the project forward with a recommendation to Planning and Zoning Commission and then City Council.
And if HPC does that, let's say they do that, you're able to have the quorum and they decide that they're ready to move forward on the 23rd, would it be heard that same day by the planning commission?
No, because we've got to advertise.
Yeah, the next planning and zoning commission meeting will be the 27th of June.
And that can be
Yeah.
virtual.
Okay. Yeah, if you could take another stab at the detailed schedule, I mean, just whatever changes that you're thinking about now,
Yeah.
just so for my planning purposes.
Yeah.
I try not to.
And we will work, what this is all, we can work this out. We're just trying to accommodate another advisory committee meeting and then coming back to the HPC and knowing that we then have to work with the Planning and Zoning Commission timeframe. It's, it's a lot to
The packets would be.
to capture, because we do need to have the draft finalized, 10 days in advance?
But June 17th is when the packets would have to get out.
Yeah.
On Friday.
I'll be sending out an email to the advisory committee, I guess this week, to see when we can set up another time, and hopefully that'll be, sometime very soon. Keep the process moving.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for being here. James, it's good to finally meet you in person. I met you on the screen.
Yeah, thank you.
The only other thing that we have just on the agenda, the ongoing reminder to do your training, annual training. So I've been forwarding emails that we get from Christy. Just make sure that you're keeping up with that, and I'll be reminding and hounding you guys. But if you do attend the training, whether it's virtual or in person, make sure that you just summarize it and send it to us, as well as Christy. And I'll let you know when the Mind Tree Pine Awards is, and members of the HBC are definitely welcome to attend.
And I'm gonna use, if it's okay, send her Molly's email, and she had it kind of scripted what she did. I think so. I might just kind of look at that, but I'll run it by you. But I might just use that because she's usually pretty about it. So I don't have to go up there and sit in there and go, if that's okay.
That's fine, yeah. I think it's nice to recognize these projects that have really, put in so much hard work and dedication, so. I'm going to see if there's any public comments, any other.
Anybody else?
About the standards or in general?
With standards, or just in general?
I was wondering what's happening to the burned out house on Front Street.
So planning, inspections, and code enforcement have all been out on the property, met the property owners as well. The last I heard from the property owner is that they wanted to move forward and demolish the property, the buildings. And staff has outlined with them the proper procedure in order to do that. We have not received an application. I haven't had any follow-up.
Just as a safety hazard, I would think.
Yeah.
It looked like a liability, would want to get it torn down.
Yeah, I know that code enforcement has, and the director of inspections have also been involved in conversations with the property owners, so, I mean, at some point, I would imagine that there'll be an application that will be, because obviously the demo applications are a major COA, and so that would be in front of the HPC regardless of, you know, whether it's new construction or demo.
I thought it was maybe litigation over the death or whatever.
I have no idea.
And what about the vacant lot on West Davis, has the trees cut down that are falling, that are falling in the street? Next to the terraced house, just along the terrace yard, is somebody going to build there, or do you know?
There's an application that has been submitted for new construction on that property as well. There was a initial meeting with the applicant, I guess 2 months ago, where there was some feedback from the HBC to the applicant, and we have not, we have not received any revisions to that or updates. When that does occur, then it will be back in front of the HBC.
The house next door, when I was doing my house in the 90s, I would have liked to put an attached garage on my house, the back of it, where it would be visible. Well, I was pretty much told I couldn't do that. When they built that new house there, some years later, it has a garage that has a breezeway to the house, to the garage. But that roof actually makes it legally an attached building, so they got to do it, but I couldn't do it on my house. I was kind of peed off about that, but in general, I'd like to see people build rather than have a vacant lot there, like it's done for the last 50 years.
Yeah. So that will come back at some point, but there were definitely comments and recommendations.
But their driveway access is on the side, isn't it?
Not currently, no.
They don't have any kind of driveway access?
They are proposing to have driveway access off of West Davis.
Really?
We have the application on file. If you want to see it, you can contact the planning department.
I'm just curious, I don't want to fuss at that, but I'm just wondering how they're going to do that.
Yeah, I'm happy to share it with you. If you want to contact me, I can send it to you.
That retaining wall is going to come out anyway.
There was also, it wasn't part of their current application, but there was also discussion about rebuilding, reconstructing the retaining wall. Obviously, there would need to be a curb cut, so will be some substantial changes to the grading of that property.
Because I thought they had a driveway on the side street. I guess not.
I mean, I don't know if historically at one point there was.
Well, there's a driveway opening, and it looks like there used to be a driveway going to the back.
There's an easement that's being contested, that's what's going
Is that
on
what's
around.
happening?
Yeah, that easement about who owned it got contested, and I think it didn't go with the vacant lot in the end.
I don't remember, I guess it was a house there when I was a little kid, but I don't remember how it worked. It would be nice to have something there. It's nice to have not having those trees hanging over the sidewalk.
Is there any other comments or suggestions before I move on? So I know we did the training seminars, and Jamie did the minor certificates.
Yep, just so included in your packet, I don't need to go into detail, but I traditionally give you the COAs, minor COAs that have been approved.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's no other comments or questions, then I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Okay. Well, I do it first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so tired.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Jamie, will you do a roll call?
Sure, Chair Ulis,
Yes.
Lori Bryan,
Yes.
Josh Atkins,
Here. Yes.
We're all tired.
And Wendy, guys.
Yes.
All right,
Okay, meeting adjourned.
all right, thanks so much, guys.